With just hours to go before Election Day, voter turnout in many states is already way above the average when taking into consideration early in-person voting and absentee and mail-in ballots. In fact, Fox News posted online that several states had already surpassed 70% of their 2016 voter turnout the week before Election Day. Overall, they estimate more than half of the 2016 voter turnout has already cast their ballots. And funny enough, Google reports that the question, "Can I change my vote?" was trending, which was exactly what happened in 2016 just before the election as well. The polls are, of course, predicting a Trump loss just as in 2016. But by later in the week, maybe next week, we'll have a good idea of who won. But in the meantime, we need to get out, cast our ballots, and then what? Does our civic duty end until the next election? We'll answer the question in this episode of Activate America, Getting Active to Throw Off Government Tyranny. 2020 saw the largest advance of government tyranny in American history. To many Americans, this advance came out of nowhere and arrived directly onto their doorstep. But members of the John Birch Society understand that the tools and controls to help make this advance were put into place months and years ahead of time. As we have pointed out time and time again, the further governments stray from their constitutional limitations, the more freedom is taken from citizens. This occurs a slice at a time, and it's not until you are prohibited from doing something that you even notice this advance. For instance, no matter the crisis, your God-given rights are not expendable. There is no emergency loophole in the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, or the Constitution stating your rights are contingent upon the whims of government. To find something like that, you need to look no further than the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that government grants rights and that rights can be limited according to the law. However, many Americans have the understanding that government operates on its own without their involvement. And to a point, we would agree. But let's turn that one around. Knowing the nature of government, government should never operate on its own without your involvement. Because your involvement is another check on the ability of government to either consume or corrupt everything that it touches. George Washington is reported to have said, "Government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Never for a moment should it be left to irresponsible action." That irresponsibility is a two-way street. Those in government not abiding by constitutional limitations, and citizens not involved in the running of local, state, and federal governments. The perfect storm of citizen apathy and inaction, and elected officials operating outside of their limitations has led to the growth of government without challenge. At least the president had the good sense to not attempt COVID-19 orders for states and citizens, since it is not a power delegated within the Constitution to the federal government. Rather, the state and local governments decided to exercise the power elected officials gifted to them over the years, including closing businesses and churches, mandating business practices, and mandating illogical and unwise healthcare practices. The culmination of this has led to a spike in depression, suicide, abuse, and drug and alcohol use. Yet, every single one of these government actions, whether based on law, edict, regulation, or rule, is unconstitutional based on the First, Fourth, Sixth, and Ninth Amendments. Each state has adopted some form of the Bill of Rights into its constitution to protect basic liberties and freedom. Regardless of the situation, government cannot merely cancel or temporarily suspend these. Now, globalists, the biggest promoters of tyranny today, are salivating over the very idea of using COVID-19 as an opportunity to construct a new world order. The World Economic Forum, a leading cheerleader for globalism, published a book in July of this year called COVID-19, The Great Reset. The founder of the World Economic Forum, Professor Klaus Schwab, is one of the co-authors. The book describes the opportunity that COVID-19 presents. The fault lines of the world most notably social divides, lack of fairness, absence of cooperation, failure of global governance and leadership, now lie exposed as never before. And people feel the time for reinvention has come. A new world will emerge, the contours of which are for us to both imagine and to draw. A few pages later, it gleefully comments on the Black Plague. If such profound social, political, and economic challenges could be provoked by the plague in the medieval world, could the COVID-19 pandemic mark the onset of a similar turning point with long-lasting and dramatic consequences for our world today? Regarding what opportunities, the book reads on page 16, it might thus provoke changes that would have seemed inconceivable before the pandemic struck, such as new forms of monetary policy like helicopter money, already a given, the reconsideration/recalibration of some of our social priorities, and an augmented search for the common good as a policy objective, the notion of fairness acquiring political potency, radical welfare and taxation measures, and drastic geopolitical realignments. The broader point is this: the possibilities for change and the resulting new order are now unlimited and only bound by our imagination, for better or for worse. And then on pages 61 to 62, it suggests that governments should be growing in scope and size, which we recognize as a hallmark of tyranny. It reads, one of the great lessons of the past 5 centuries in Europe and America is this: acute crises contribute to boosting the power of the state. It's always been the case, and there is no reason why it should be different with the COVID-19 pandemic. In its conclusion, just dripping with leftist innuendos, it reads, in the post-pandemic world, questions of fairness will come to the fore, ranging from stagnating real incomes for a vast majority to the redefinition of our social contracts. Similarly, deep concerns about the environment or questions about how technology can be deployed and governed for the benefit of society will force their way onto the political agenda. All these issues predated the pandemic, but COVID-19 has both laid them bare for all to see and amplified them. The direction of the trends hasn't changed, but in the wake of COVID-19, it got a lot faster. The absolute prerequisite for a proper reset is greater collaboration and cooperation within and between countries. Cooperation can be summed up as shared intentionality to act together towards a common goal. We simply cannot progress without it. Will the post-pandemic era be characterized by more or less cooperation? A very real risk exists that tomorrow the world will be even more divided, nationalistic, and prone to conflicts than it is today. Many of the trends reviewed in the macro section suggest that, moving into the future, our world will be less open and less cooperative than before the pandemic. But an alternative scenario is possible, one in which collective action within communities and greater collaboration between nations enable a more rapid and peaceful exit from the corona crisis. As economies restart, there is an opportunity to embed greater societal equality and sustainability into the recovery, accelerating rather than delaying progress towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and unleashing a new era of prosperity. Folks, in short, prior to the pandemic, globalism was on the fritz. Globalists are now seeing an opportunity in COVID-19 as well as in this summer's hyped-up manufactured discontent of leftist rioters to advance not only their radical environmental agenda of 2030, think Green New Deal on steroids, but also remaking society into the communist utopia that the last 4 years has seemingly derailed. No matter who wins the election, the globalists are coming for your freedom. The battle against the Great Reset will be fought not only in Congress and the White House, but in the state houses, the church houses, and even in your neighborhood. Members of the John Birch Society should not take their role lightly. It is because of your activity that the globalists have not accomplished their goals over the last 60 years. Let's be sure they don't set up their new world order on our watch. JBS member chapters need to focus on being more and more active over the next coming months as no other outlet or organization will be putting legs under this issue to defend the Republic. We will be wrapping up our campaigns with plenty of new materials in 2021 on this very subject that you can use to help educate others and to bring them into the organization. Our enemy has been teetering for quite some time, but now they see a real opportunity to make headway. Let's ensure they do not. To give you a better idea of the Great Reset, Alex Newman has reported on the scope of this for the New American. He wrote an article and recorded a video on it. We'll include the links in the video description. Please read, watch, and then share with others. Let them know that Americans concerned about freedom and independence must be active in their God-given role as a check on government tyranny. With your help, one member at a time, one leader at a time, we will stop tyranny and restore the American Republic for all Americans. So we got to ask, will you act today? Until next time, this is Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society saying stay active, everyone.